Hello, my name's Jonathan Gribbin, and I'm the Director of Public Health for Nottinghamshire, and I lead the county's response to COVID-19. None of us want our children to miss out on all of the benefits that school brings. So I want to let you know just how hard our schools have been working to ensure that they've all got in place the sensible precautions to receive back pupils at the start of the new year. But of course, all of us need to play our part in stopping the spread. So alongside the guidance you know about already, I also want to urge you to follow the guidance on safe travel to school. Please walk or cycle, or if a car journey really is essential because you live more than 2 miles from school, please arrange drop-offs well away from the school itself. You can find out more details about this and about all of the other government guidance on our website. If you've any questions about plans or arrangements at a particular school, then the school itself will be the best place to answer them. Thank you for watching.
The three words I'd use to describe my role is team, rewarding and challenging.
Positive, team, supportive.
Three words I'd use to describe this job: gratifying, inspirational, challenging. Before this, I was a hairdresser, but I wanted to do more than make people feel good. I wanted to help change their lives. I'm now part of a team that does exactly that every day.
I spend my days talking to the residents of Nottinghamshire, their families and the support services that help them on a day-to-day basis. We're the front door to adult social care in Nottinghamshire, and we're responsible for taking the time to build a picture through talking with our residents about how they lead their lives, the things that they find difficult, the things that they can do, and also looking at how they wish to fulfil their lives to the best of their possibilities. In the 5 years of working here, I've learnt so much, particularly about social care. I had no previous experience in it, but through a really good training and induction plan, I was given all of the skills and information that I needed to be able to do my job. I've also been able to grow personally and within my career since then through a personally tailored plan of support and training to keep me going.
We're a really close-knit team and we thrive off helping the community of Nottinghamshire to live a valued and independent lifestyle. Every day is different and there's always new things to learn, which makes the role interesting and really exciting. At the end of the day, knowing that I've helped a number of people to have a better quality of life makes every day worthwhile.
My name's Jonathan Gribbin. I'm the Director of Public Health for Nottinghamshire County, and I'd like to tell you about the COVID-19 Local Outbreak Control Plan for Nottinghamshire. It's all about containing the virus so that we can protect one another, safeguard our critical services, and enable our schools, our workplaces, our communities to flourish again. And the plan describes how we will do that in Nottinghamshire. It complements the national test and trace arrangements, and it builds on local arrangements with key partners like Public Health England, the district and borough councils, the city council and our local NHS. It identifies a range of settings such as schools, workplaces, universities, care homes and so on, which require specific plans to deal with any fresh outbreaks of the virus. It describes how we'll be monitoring on a daily basis to spot if there are any new outbreaks, and then coordinating action to investigate and deal with them, deploying extra testing capacity if we need to, or contact tracing as appropriate.
The plan also deals with how we will continue to provide support for people who are made vulnerable because they need to self-isolate, and we'll be doing that through our community support hub. And we'll refine the plan as we go along to reflect the latest best practice and the information which government will be providing to the council. Finally, I want to acknowledge the lengths to which so many people and organisations have gone to already in recent months to stick with the guidance, to maintain social distancing of 2 metres wherever possible, to wash your hands thoroughly and frequently, to stay at home if you or someone in your household has symptoms, to get tested and to follow the advice that you receive when you get the result. By observing the guidance, you're protecting not only your own life and livelihood, that of your friends and also your loved ones, but also that of people you may never meet, but people who you're depending on and whom we must each depend as well. Your role in that is critical. Thank you for your help to contain the virus.
Hello, my name's Jonathan Gribbin and I'm the Director of Public Health for Nottinghamshire, and I lead the county's response to COVID-19. None of us want our children to miss out on all of the benefits that school brings. So I want to let you know just how hard our schools have been working to ensure that they've all got in place the sensible precautions to receive back pupils at the start of the new year. But of course, all of us need to play our part in stopping the spread. So alongside the guidance you know about already, I also want to urge you to follow the guidance on safe travel to school. Please walk or cycle, or if a car journey really is essential because you live more than 2 miles from school, please arrange drop-offs well away from the school itself. You can find out more details about this and about all of the other government guidance on our website. If you've any questions about plans or arrangements at a particular school, then the school itself will be the best place to answer them. Thank you for watching.
of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee, which is being held remotely, with the majority of members joining the meeting from their own homes. As well as myself, the other members present in the meeting today are Councillor Stephen Garner, Councillor Roger Dare, Councillor Chris Barnfather, Councillor Tom Hollis, Councillor Sheila Place, Councillor Mike Pringle, Councillor Francis Perdue-Horan. Councillor Parry Simiridis is going to be in the meeting, but we've just got a couple of technical issues at the moment. Councillor Graham Chapman, Councillor Anne Peach, Councillor David Lloyd, Mr Chris King, Mr Andy Woodward and Mr Terry Needham. The independent advisor to the committee, Mr William Bourne, is also present. We also have the following officers present today. We have the Group Manager for Business Service Centres and Employee Service Centre, that's Sarah Stevenson. We have Group Manager for Finance Strategy and Compliance, Keith Palfreman. The Pensions Team Manager, John Clues. Senior Finance Business Partner, Tamsin Rabbits. And the Clerk to the meeting, Peter Barker. Today's meeting will be in two parts, with the second part of the meeting being held in closed session should members approve that proposal later on in this morning's meeting. This is the first virtual meeting of the Pension Fund Committee to be held in line with the new requirements of the Coronavirus Act 2020. So please do bear with us if we experience any technical issues. I know from other meetings that this sometimes does happen. If we do lose any members from the call temporarily, officers will seek to assist in getting them reconnected as soon as possible. Officers will inform the meeting if they're unable to rectify the problem, and if we need the meeting to be paused for a short time or adjourned temporarily. Could I ask that all those at the meeting please mute their microphones unless they're speaking. There is a raised hand if you want to speak, and I'll indicate to the member who wishes to speak that it's their turn to call. I think I have a list on the side showing who is wishing to speak. Okay, so the first item on the agenda today is to note the appointment by full council on the 11th of June 2020 of Councillor Eric Kerry, myself as chairman, and Councillor Stephen Garner as vice chairman of the committee for the 2021 municipal year. Are we okay with noting that, everybody? Okay, thank you very, very much. The second item is to note the membership of the committee for the 2021 municipal year. Again, we're all happy to note that.
Yeah, noted, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Third item today is the minutes of the last meeting, which was eons ago. It seems like years ago, but it was only the 12th of March 2020.
Councillor, does Mr Woodward want to say anything at this point? Sorry.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, just to rectify the name in Andy, it's Alan.
Alan, sorry. Did I say Andy?
It's down as Andy.
Yes, I did. I read Alan. Yes, I did. It's on the front of the front sheet. I do. My apologies.
No problem.
The name's shining on the screen. Thank you very much for letting us know that. Okay, so I'd also like to ask the committee, therefore, that the minutes from that meeting can be agreed. There's no formal vote for this, so is that okay? Fine, thank you. Moving on to item number 4 is apologies for absence. As far as I'm aware, we have no apologies, but would you like to update me, Mr. Barker?
Yep, thank you, Chair. We do actually have a couple. I'm aware that some members aren't able to attend both parts of today's meeting, but we have actually had apologies from Mrs. Sue Reader and Councillor Webster, and Councillor Hollis replaces Councillor Smith on a permanent basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Thank you, Peter. I would like to welcome Councillor Tom Hollis to membership of the committee and look forward to working with him for the rest of this term. Welcome. Item number 5, declarations of interest. So 5A is, do any members or officers present have any disclosable pecuniary interests to declare? If so, please mention and explain them now. I don't see any hands. So section B then, do any members or officers present have any private interests either pecuniary or non-pecuniary, to declare? No. Okay. Thank you very much. So let's move on to the first substantive item today. Is item number 6 on the agenda. It's Pensions Admin Performance Report, our annual report. And I'd like to invite Mr. John Clues to introduce the report, please.
Thanks, Chair. This is rather a long report, as normal with this report. The purpose of the report is to inform the Pension Fund Committee of the 4 quarters of the year end up to the 31st of March 2020, and relates to the performance of the Pensions Administration team. This year I've made a few changes to the report. I've put a bit more information in terms of what
just one moment, please, John. Councillor Hollis has indicated. I saw his hand. Is that? Do you? Oh, it's not there now. So that's fine. Please continue.
Thanks, Chair. Just to update, I've put some additional information into this report, really to update the committee really on what the Pension Benefits Administration is all about, and a bit more information that was requested by Councillor Barnfather earlier on in the year. So I'll get to that as part of my report. Okay. So in terms of the background, as I've said, this is up to the 31st of March. I've sneaked in a few bits of information that I thought would be relevant over the 31st of March, which I thought would help in some way. So, in terms of the valuation, the first part of the report, we completed the valuation as of the 31st of March 2020, based on the 29 valuation figures. All the contribution rates were issued to scheme employers as of the 1st of April 2020. So that was a large piece of work that the admin team did in the particular year. So moving on. Each year, the main issue for the administration of the fund has been the performance of scheme employers, providing their statutory data in a timely manner. And we've discussed this on a number of occasions, and we'll pick this up in a number of ways. However, the pension fund has received all its administration data for this year.
Good.
In terms of the highlighting some of the main activities that the admin team undertakes, I've shown how we're organised, plus also some of the main activities like maintaining contributions, maintaining our admin database, providing estimates of benefit, and you can see the full list of some of the main activities that we've done. I've also given you some information related to the establishment of the pensions team, just to give you an idea of the resources that we have in place at this particular point in time. Again, moving through the report, I've put the cost per fund member and the average cost across the benchmarking club that we belong to. Unfortunately, we haven't got the 2020 figures as yet, as they won't be available till October. But you can see the price, the average price against the fund member cost.
John, can I just interject there? Just it might be that you would, rather than waiting for next year's report or whatever, if you'd email us with the information when you get it in October, so that we're aware of the latest situation.
Absolutely, Chair.
Thank you.
Moving on, we move on to data quality. The pension regulator continues to raise concerns about LGPS funds, and you'll be aware earlier in the year the pension committee agreed to undertake some work that the fund needed to undertake in respect of data, and Sarah is going to be providing an update of this in her report.
Yeah.
As part of our data administration, we are required to report our pensions accuracy to the pensions regulator, and I've put a small piece of information in point 15 to show our accuracy of data in 2019 and our accuracy of data for 2020. Where the conditional scheme data is missing, as we weren't able to run that data in time for this report. This is because we have to do our annual benefit statements prior to running that data, and these weren't completed until the 31st of August of this year. So we will be rerunning that data and getting an updated percentage to be able to report to the pensions regulator. But I'm expecting it to be roughly, probably slightly better than the 60% of last year. But I'll have to wait and see until we've run that report.
John, may I come in on that one too, if that's okay? Are you able to benchmark that performance compared to other authorities? Is there a link to any other national figures, or how do we compare that?
There isn't actually, Chair, only by going through some of the similar type of reports across other funds and having a look. There is going to be some work done through the governance, the National Governance Project, on benchmarking of data, and I suspect that might be picked up as part of that project. In fact, I will highlight that because I am part of the national project on the group, so I will bring that up.
Thank you.
Pension fund membership statistics is the next area, and you'll see that these have increased over time, and they do continue to increase. They do actually fluctuate quite a bit, and it does depend on when you take the actual data. But in the three main areas of members, we're up to 142,000 member records. In terms of employers, I've just highlighted the fact that we've moved from 342 active employees to 302. We haven't lost any employers. We've just amalgamated a number of employers into single employers. So a group of academies have moved from, say, 10 to being logged as a single employer. And we continue to do that to try and improve and make administration easier. In the report, I'm required to give you a list of scheme employers that have come into the scheme, and I've just listed those in the report just for noting. One of the new areas of the report that I've added is in relation to complaints, and Councillor Barnfather, I think we discussed this, I can't remember, probably just after the committee, just after Christmas, and I said I would put some of these into my next report. So this is up to the 31st of March 2020, and I've highlighted the written complaints that the pension administration receive. It's quite difficult to collate because we get phone calls coming through, and then people either raise issues and they're not actually complaints. So these are actually just written complaints that come into the admin team. So we've had 25. We do various, I suppose, investigations into the complaints, and we look at what are justified and what are not justified. We tend to work on those within the first 2 or 3 days of the complaint coming in, because we don't like to obviously have them hanging over. These can then move on, though, to stage 1 appeals, where an individual isn't satisfied with the complaint response and therefore goes on to put in an official independent review of the position that they're complaining against, if that makes any sense. And then it'll move on to stage 2, and then finally, if we've not been able to resolve it by then, it will go to the pension ombudsman. So what I intend to do going forward is, this is the first year of collecting this data that I've been able to report it, so I'll be bringing you further data updates in future, so that you'll be able to see a comparison of whether we're going up, down or sideways.
Through the chair, if I may.
Yes. So just going to bring you in, Councillor Bornfather. I think I'd like just to formally move the recommendations on page 19 before opening it up. I really should maybe have done that earlier, but I formally move the recommendation. Do I have a seconder, please?
And I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. So yes, Chris, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John, for including this information in the report. I wonder if you can just give us a flavour, without breaching obviously any confidentiality data protection, just a flavour of the type of complaint, and I suppose specifically in relation to the stage 1 and stage 2 appeals which were upheld. Yeah. So in terms of complaints, we get quite a few in relation to people's payment of benefits. So that's generally the main one, and that comes around where people have not taken the time or have misunderstood what they wish to take, their choices in relation to their benefits. So a good example is a person may tell us that they want a lump sum payment. They want to take a smaller lump sum and a larger pension, which they're able to do under the scheme, and they will send their retirement pack in telling us of that. We'll go through the stages of doing the calculations, getting the information out to them, and then once we've done that and made a payment, they will sometimes say they'll change their minds, and they'll say, well, I'd misunderstood, I wanted a larger lump sum, smaller pension. And sometimes, and that happens, I wouldn't say frequently, but it does happen. And then they therefore put in a written complaint that we've either mismanaged it, or we haven't told them, or they've been misinformed, something along those lines. So that's one of the common ones. One of the other ones is around transfers, where people, because it does take quite a time in relation to transfers. So timing of transfer requests sometimes brings in complaints as well, because people tend to leave their transfer requests until later, and they only have a year from starting in the pension fund to make a transfer request. So a good example is 2 weeks ago we had a complaint whereby somebody was complaining it was taking too long to do their transfer request. We'd received the transfer request within, and we were dealing with it within two weeks. We hadn't got back to them. Well, we have 2 months to do a transfer request, but they were worried because they'd left their transfer request until the last couple of weeks into their year's transfer. So there's that kind of activity. And then there are complaints where we've just got something wrong, and I can't. I'm just trying to think of where we have. We had we've got a complaint going at the moment where somebody was made, I think it was redundant, if I remember, and we gave them an incorrect estimate. Unfortunately, we added
a pension increase twice to the estimate, so he got a higher estimate than he actually got paid. It was just one of those things. We made a mistake. We accepted that we'd made a mistake, but unfortunately, he can't have the amounts that he was he was provided. So that's caused a bit of a problem, and I suspect that might go to the Ombudsman. But we hold up our hands when we do make a mistake and try and put them right as much as we possibly can. But there's a couple of examples for you.
Are you happy with that? Answer your question, Chris, yes?
I can't.
I think you're mute, Chris. You're mute. You're still mute. You've clicked it twice.
No, yes. It's...
Chris, you're mute still. I think when you're clicking it, it's somehow you're clicking it twice. Just that's it. You've got it. You've got it.
Right. Sorry, I'm obviously too quick with the clicker finger. Apologies for that, Chair. Thank you, John. Thank you for the information. And I suppose just my observation would be, considering the large number of members that we've got, the huge and complex amount of data that you're dealing with, that's a remarkably small number of complaints, and I think that shows the efficacy of your department. So thank you.
All right, no, thank you. I'll bring more information on that as we get it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Councillor Parry Simbiridis, please. It's your right to speak. I've got your hand. Shall I come back to you? Okay, Councillor Hollis, you have your hand raised. I'll come back to Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Simbiridis was muted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Would you like me to go now, Chair, and bring Parry later, or?
It looks like Councillor Simbiridis is still muted, so yes, please, Councillor Hollis.
Thank you then, Chair. Well, firstly, thank you, Jonathan, for your presentation and the report as well. It was I'll be honest and say I had nothing else better to do at the weekend other than read the report fully. So maybe that means maybe I need to sign up to Netflix again. I don't know, but no. And thanks for your honesty with regards to the complaints. And I think when, as Councillor Barnfather said, well, when you are dealing with such a complex situation and data set and the large number of members, I think it's quite impressive that we've been able to keep the written complaints down to so low. But I think that being said, obviously that it's fair to say it's an honest report. The report makes clear quite where there's room for improvement, and I have a series of questions. If the chair would be happy for me just to ask them all on block, and then hopefully get some answers. So obviously, just with regards to paragraph 9, the data quality in regards to the pensions regulator raising concerns, it's clear to me that you will have a plan, but what is the plan to improve that data quality? And you mentioned in your report that obviously a lot of it's down to the providers and the partners. Have we got anything, how can I say, tech improvements that we can make, communication improvements, stuff that we can do to improve the data quality coming to us in a more timely manner? And I think that's kind of my first question, really, just to make sure we don't fall foul of some of the rules. And then just breezing back to paragraph 9, it's really helpful actually to understand exactly how many full-time equivalents we have and staff. But I noticed in some of the other reports that we are coming back now to ask for ad hoc posts, which aren't necessarily included in that. And I was wondering if it is more, how can I say, prudent to maybe include some permanent staff that, for example, are there to react to changes. I mean, some of these kind of changing situations and more difficult moments our fund presents. And bearing in mind that you quite clearly state that we are below the average of benchmarking club, which in some ways is good, but if we aren't meeting the targets and putting pressure on the staff, that maybe needs to be rectified. And I think that kind of then moves smoothly into the performance data. I have a lot of concerns that we aren't meeting some of the statutory deadlines. I mean, obviously, even a couple of the stats being as low as 31%, 59% and 61%. I'd like to know what efforts are going in to improve those stats. But secondly, we aren't even meeting our own targets with regards to some of this. I can see some of them are quite ambitious. 5 days when the statutory deadline's 2 months. But if we are setting ourselves those targets, why aren't we meeting them? Would be the next question. And I've got and that's really for a point of clarity. I know it's on the page 10 of the report, paragraph 35, was the increase in processes. And I just wondered why we'd had a quite substantial increase of processes. Is that because of changes to pension rules and allowing people to take their lump sums? And I just wondered if we'd expected that to increase more as people become more familiar with it. And the final question being, with regards to paragraph 37, I know sensitive, member deaths. I wondered what is the complex problem with regards to making sure deaths are recorded and actions taken accordingly, and I presume we have some sensitive conversations where the fund maybe has to recover funds, or quite sensitive conversations with families, and obviously if we can get our processes correct at our end or smoother, we're going to make it a bit more sensitive at the other end. So I do apologise, Chair, and for the committee for asking so many questions, but the answers.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Just an overview, really, of where before Mr. Clues or John answers the specifics you've asked about. If you look to the next paper, the next item, transforming pension administration, that really shows the way that we are trying to embrace technology. We are trying to improve the processes, so the communication between the employers and us and the members of the fund are as accurate as we can be. And there's a history of funds, the history of improved performance over the years with admin, and the next item agenda really shows how we are being strategic in doing that, and you'll be able to have more information when we go through the next report, I think. But John, if you'd like to answer the specifics there, please.
Sure. First of all, just in terms of data from employers, the pension fund has a strategy called the admin strategy, which requires all the employers to sign up to that strategy, and lays out really what employers are required to do. If you look on page 8, or shall I put point 29, I outline the employer team work directly with employers, and every year we have to collect data in relation to their members or our members, so that we can send out our annual benefit statements. That's the main piece of data that we get in each year, and we've outlined the submission dates and the accuracy of that data, and we keep a constant check on it. It has been improving over time. The employer support and compliance team work closely with the employers. We do have a number of employers each year who, for want of a better phrase, are challenged in getting their data in by the deadlines that they're set, and we had particular challenges this year in terms of employers getting their data in. But the main lot of data comes through a year-end process that we challenge employers each year. We will be, and have done in the past, reported employers to either the pensions regulator, or should I say, I wouldn't say fine them, but we have charged them for additional admin time that the admin team have actually undertaken. So we're also working on data each year. So last year we worked on the valuation data and improved that data. and we have set out a data improvement plan, as Councillor Kerry has indicated, and that's being picked up in the next report. But we have a plan ongoing in terms of looking and rectifying data. Just in terms of the performance data, in the pensions administration strategy, we set out some fund KPIs, and yes, you're quite right, they are challenging. In terms, we are trying to compare that against the SITFA benchmark data, which we're part of a benchmarking club, and we have particular difficulties in some areas, and that's because we're moving resources around to try and undertake or meet some of those benchmarking criteria. Divorce settlements, for example, which is one of our poorer benchmarks, we don't get many divorce cases, and we tend to find that we get a lot of difficulty getting information in from individuals, and we have to go back constantly to members in terms of data. So we don't particularly do well on that particular benchmark, but like I say, we don't get many requests, so we don't put an awful lot of resource into that, and it is quite time consuming. Deaths, in terms of our death processes, you've quite rightly highlighted. Death processes are rather challenging. We try and make sure, and we're not able to. I don't actually take this out of the statistics, but we generally pay a death grant within 5 days of being notified of the death. So that's the main payment we make. We then have to chase various other data from families in terms of making further payments. It's becoming more complex and more difficult because of the complex nature of some families now. We're having to make decisions in relation to who to pay pensions to. We're having to check legal positions and check who are the next of kin, and it takes quite a bit of time and resource to undertake all those checks. So we do have I suppose I wouldn't say difficulty, but we have processes in place that follow those things up. I mean, even today, even when I come in today, we've had a question in relation to missing information on a death that we're trying to chase up, and that's not come into the fund yet, and we don't know where it's gone. So we're constantly working with families, working with members in relation to deaths. What else was it? Was there anything else?
Councillor Hollis, have you got something to add? Sorry.
If the chair's happy for me to come back. No, I think that was everything, and really take the opportunity while I am back is just to say thank you for the comprehensive feedback there. And I think when we're talking about administration of the fund, I'm sure there's not much differing opinion of committee members. We all want the fund to be administered as smoothly as and sensitively as possible, particularly when it comes to things like deaths and divorces and some of the more emotional times in people's lives. But I think the only thing I would challenge is, you know, although it is great to see that we are performing well with regards to cost of the fund per member, but I certainly wouldn't object to making sure your team has more resources to ensure that you can carry out the work, as opposed to, as I've made clear already later on in the report, coming back on an ad hoc basis. it's fair to say that we are going to have changing circumstances on a regular basis, so build that into it. And if those staff are twiddling the thumbs, I'm sure they can help pick up the slack and make sure we meet some of these data performance sets. But that's really my opinion, but I appreciate the feedback. And also thank you to Sarah Stevenson. She's already emailed me a bit of information with regards to the reports, and that's really appreciated. Thank you.
And just another comment, really. You know, being a new now full member of the committee, I'm sure the officers would welcome you to come into pensions and
Absolutely.
to show you in more detail how it works, and to enable you to understand the strategy we're doing from the next paper in improving those systems and processes.
The one area, apologies, I didn't respond to your question, was just in terms of processes for obtaining data. So we have gone live with a pilot employer portal, which went live in August. We're due to roll that out to other employers over the next year, and that is around the transfer of data coming into the fund in a more sort of direct and processed type way, if that's the way to describe it. So
okay, I have Councillor Simbiridis still with his hand up. Harry, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Jonathan, just quick one. The fund cost per member, what is actually involved? Thank you.
What? How we calculate the cost per fund? Well, generally the cost is it includes the whole of the administration of the fund, the staffing costs, some of the IT costs, and various other additional administration costs that are brought together, and then it's basically divided across the fund, and it gives us a cost per member. So basically, it's all our admin costs divided against the membership.
Thank you.
Okay, Parry. Thank you. I have Terry Needham, who would like to speak now. Can I just remind councillors and members that when you finish speaking, can you lower your hands, please? It's a little bit difficult to manage it if we don't do that. Thank you very much. Terry.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to reiterate, really, was something that Councillor Hollis was talking about, which is resources of the actual team that John's got. There's 26 people in post, or just over, or 26 people on the approved establishment, 23 in post, so it's down anyway. And then you look at the other reports that we've got in front of us today. We've got transforming the next one, which includes data validation, data improvement, employer portals, employee portals, etc. Then you go on to the McLeod judgment, which again is another, which is a lot more work, etc. And then you go on the guaranteed minimum pension thing, reconciliation, which again is recalculation of people's benefits. And I just wonder over a period of time whether you've got the actual resources in-house, or will do, to actually do that and keep up with the with the report you've given us today. I know as well as you do, John, that these people do not fall off trees. No. You can't just go to the job centre and just employ them after 2 weeks 2 weeks training. It takes time, and it takes quite a lot of time to get people experienced and to do the job properly. Just a point, Chairman, that's all. I just want to make sure we've got the resources in place to actually deal with these.
Chair's got his... Chair.
Unmute Councillor Kerry, please. Thank you.
I switched mine off to stop getting echo. Yes, sorry, I apologise. No, we have put additional resources in. for example, in GMP, etc., where needed, and we're constantly monitoring it. And actually, we've already also have succession planning, all that kind of stuff in place, so that we know. But the issue right now is it's difficult to. We really do need to get more knowledge about the transformation. And yes, we do meet short-term needs, but the important thing is to get that digital transformation through and respond where we need to once we understand the longer-term needs, etc. Yes, we have reacted to short-term needs. Jonathan, do you want to enlarge on that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The fund is becoming more complicated. Managing the fund is becoming more complicated, and Councillor Hollison has identified that, and it is becoming more complicated. And we will be coming on to the McLeod judgment, where we have got a plan, and yes, we will be seeking further resources, and we'll come on to that. GMP hasn't gone away, quite rightly. I've got a report on that. So we are looking at our resources constantly. In fact, we did a recruitment last week online where we've recruited 4 staff. None of them have got local government pensions experience. 2 of them have got payroll experience and have some knowledge of pensions experience, and we've recruited 2 very high caliber people, but they have no experience, so there will be a lot of training to be put in place, and we're going to have to continually do that. And Terry's absolutely right, they don't grow on trees. So I think we are having to plan this more, and I suspect we will be coming back to committee with some more requests and a bit more of a plan in relation to going forward. And I'll pick up some of that when I get onto the McLeod case. But yes, and all funds are having difficulty with this at this point in time, and McLeod is certainly going to create a lot of problems for funds. Hence some of the comments in my comments to go back to the government in the consultation. Chair, you're on mute again.
Sorry, I've been getting feedback, so I've been trying to mute while I'm not. I'll leave it on from now on. Tom, would you like to come back? Just that we spend a lot of time so far on this. Is it a quick question?
It's a very quick one, and I think it's actually been a good discussion because we can't do any of the things in the fund that we want to do without it being resourced properly. I think the contributions from the officers have been absolutely fantastic, and I certainly support it all. Particularly, not to highlight my liberal and more left credentials, but I really support actually investing in people. And this is a highly skilled industry. I'd much rather make sure we say to people, you have got a long-term future as part of this fund, whether it be North Nottinghamshire, West Nottinghamshire Authority, whoever ends up managing it in 20 years' time. We need to make sure we're investing in people and growing people, not on one-year contracts where they don't know the certainty. And I think it allows us to plough some resources into the training as well. So I'm certainly supportive of that. And frankly, when I win my battle to divest all this energy, we'll need a lot more work on making sure we do that anyway. So but I'll leave that for now, Mr. Chairman. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. I wondered when a comment would come in. I know. Can we try and just keep the conversations to the pieces of work in question?
Throw bar into every single one, Councillor Kemp. Don't worry.
Lower your hand, please. Lower your hand, please. Thank you. Okay. If there's no more questions, we've moved the recommendations. We've had a good debate. Can I ask all those in favour, please? Are we all in
members
favour?
just either raise their hand physically or just say aye.
Yes,
that would be
physically, please. Anybody, if you can do. Okay. And I think that is carried. Just for I don't know what the word is, just to make sure we've done this right. Are there any abstentions or any against, please? No. Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to the item mentioned in the last report, item number 7, transforming pensions update. I'll formally move the recommendations which are on page 29 of the agenda pack. Do I have a seconder, please?
And I'll second that and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask Sarah Stevenson to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Councillor Kerry. So this morning's report is to update members on the Transforming Pension Administration through Digital Development and New Ways of Working programme. And secondly, to seek members' approval for the next phase of the data audit and improvement work stream. Members will remember back in September 2019 that committee approved the scope of the transformation programme, of which there are 4 phases: data, audit and improvement, scheme employers portal, hosting options and members portal. The key aims of the programme are documented within the report. The data audit, as members are aware, is key to the fund, and the pension regulator requires the fund to have a data improvement plan. As you've already heard from John, the Nottinghamshire Local Government Pension Scheme is very diverse, with a significant number of members and scheme employers, and also a range of payroll providers who provide payroll services and therefore data to scheme employers and ultimately to the fund. The fund collects and holds a raft of data from a number of different areas. So as you've already heard, we receive data from scheme employers. However, they don't always inform us of new starters, leavers and changers. And significant volumes of data come to the fund at the year-end return, which then sees a significant peak of activity for the team. Members themselves also fail to inform the fund of changes to their personal data, such as changes of address. So the impact here is that when we issue annual benefit statements, we have a significant volume of those documents returned. The fund is also responding to a range of other external factors, and the committee have heard over quite an extensive period of time now about the GMP reconciliation project, which John will further update on this morning. The fund is also going to be required to respond to the MacLeod Court of Appeal judgment regarding age discrimination. And again, there is a further report on this particular piece of work later on in this meeting. The data improvement workstream has also been reviewed so that it lays the foundations to future-proof data requirements and collections for both MacLeod, GMP reconciliation and the move towards a national pensions dashboard. The data audit is a significant piece of work for this particular transformation programme. We have divided it into 4 phases, the first 2 of which are now complete. You'll see from within the document, within the report, at paragraph 18 and 19, the significant number of members where we have actually looked at their data, and we have used over 430 data validation checks. A table at paragraph 19 actually splits members down into various categories where it shows how those checks have progressed and where there are data amendments to be made. The work that we've been doing with Civica also enables us now to access data quality dashboards, which enables us to drill down by fund level and employer to actually have a look and interrogate further the specific data held by each of those employers. We've done further forensic analysis, and we have resolved a number of the data amendments that have come up from the data audit. But there is significant further work to be done where we will need to speak to scheme employers, directly to members, and have a look at engaging with payroll providers to access other data from them. The table shown at paragraph 23 actually details some of the work already undertaken to resolve some of the data amendments that have come up through the data audit. Phase 3 now is the most extensive phase of the programme, and as such has been broken down into 5 key stages. These are actually documented at paragraph 25. There is significant investment required to enable us to move through these phases. And again, at paragraph 26, I have documented these stages with actual or estimated costs that will be attributed to each of these phases. So this report is seeking further funding of just under 420,000, so that we can actually complete the data audit and improvement work. Our approach will be to work with our supplier, Civica, for a blended approach to determine where it is that we need their expertise to work with us to resolve data amendments, and where the fund itself can work with employers and members to gather that information and update members' records. That concludes the data audit phase. As John's already said, our plan is also to move to monthly returns. Currently, employers provide a yearly return where we then pick up significant volumes of data, starters, leavers, changes. The plan ultimately is to move to a monthly return, which all employers will be required to submit. This is where our technology will come and play its part, because as the employer submits their monthly return, it will do a series of data validation checks, and where there are requirements for amending data, gathering further data, that will remain with the scheme employer for them to actually correct that data, gather that data before submitting the final file to the fund. So that would be our approach going forward, so that actually it is the scheme employer that remains the owner of the data until it satisfies all the relevant data checks before it comes to the fund. We have engaged with an LGPS fund that are in the midst of rolling out monthly returns, and the key lesson for them is about data audit and data improvement. So our plan will be to conclude the data audit and improvements working with individual scheme employers, and then move them to monthly returns over a period of time. Again, as John has already said, we have already rolled out the scheme employers portal. Nottinghamshire County Council actually went live with that in early July, and they are now able to enter directly onto the portal a number of pension administration tasks: death in service, ill health retirement, flexible retirements, etc. And the plan will be to roll that out across our scheme employer base over time. Paragraph 33 actually just details some other work that we're doing, where we're looking at where we host the pension administration system over time, whether that's within a public or a private cloud, and that aligns itself with the County Council's journey to the cloud programme. The other activity there will be a members portal. Obviously, there's been a discussion this morning around resources. One of the other things the pension regulator requires the fund to do is to start to enable members to transact with the fund self-service and digitally, so that members would have access to a portal. They would then be able to update their own personal data. They would also be able to initiate a number of processes. But again, the key thing here is data. If they initiate a process such as an estimate, and the information such as their salary is not being held against their members' record, then that process will drop them back into the office. So again, this is where over time we would want to look at the structure of the office, so that actually where members are able to self-serve, they have that ability. Where they need the expertise because of the complexity of their service history, their employment history, that's when we would actually utilise the expertise of the subject matter experts within the office. But there will be a whole raft of activities where the member can initiate and generate themselves at a time that suits them. So initially, from a resourcing point of view, we're resourcing a lot of the data audit improvement work from within the Business Services Centre, using where appropriate capacity within other teams who are used to following processes and managing data. But it may well be that we do need to come back for additional resources at a future point in time, once we get into the real detail of the data audit and improvement. So the recommendations of this report are, as Councillor Carey has already moved, for members to approve the proposed scope of the future phases of the data improvement work stream, to approve the recharge of the costs for this next phase to be funded by the fund, and agree to receive ongoing update reports on the progress of the programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for that comprehensive report. I think it's important, a couple of things that you mentioned are about the ownership of the data with employers, but also to recognise that we've been working on this now for a year, and we've made significant progress in terms of living up to the strategy that we to digitise the systems and processes and improve the quality of data and the service to our members and employers. So thank you for the work so far.
Thank you.
I'll open that up now to comments, questions, please. I've got Graham Chapman. Councillor Chapman, please.
Yeah, thank you. It all sounds very sensible, and I think, you know, you're very realistic about the fact this is going to take a long time to bed in, because there are going to be inevitably a load of glitches and problems. Sorry, there's some background noise. Somebody mute.
Can everybody mute? Can everybody mute, please, if possible? There is some sound coming through. Is that better, Graham?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So there's going to be problems. It's inevitable. It's going to take time. My question is, other people must have done this, and they've been through these problems. So therefore, there will be some best practice somewhere. And have you looked at it? And are you using it?
Councillor Carey, shall I respond?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Absolutely, Councillor Chapman. We have engaged with a number of other funds who are at varying parts of their journey on data improvement and monthly return. We particularly engaged with Cheshire, LGPS, East Riding, and that's where some of the lessons learned have come from our approach to monthly returns, to ensure we complete the data audit, then move the scheme employer to monthly returns. We won't get the benefits, we won't get the payback if we don't resolve the data amendment items before we move to monthly returns. So absolutely, we're taking and contacting all our networks on a regular basis. John attends the East Midlands Pension Officer Group, and through that group, we are able to have that ongoing dialogue to understand what others are doing as well.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question again from Terry Needham. Terry, please.
Thank you, Chairman. In paragraph 26, you detail the estimated costs, 150,000, etc., which is still to be committed. Can you just give us an indication of whether that's going to be, or how much is going to be consultants and how much is going to be in-house? Is the first question. Secondly, have you a timescale for when the members' portal will be possibly available? And just talk to us briefly about privacy of information, etc., data protection and things.
Okay, so if I take those 3 points, if I start with the in-house and the consultancy for stages 3 and 4, that's exactly why those 2 figures are currently an estimate, because we do want to take this blended approach. But I think what we've come with today is that top end to ensure that obviously we haven't come back with subsequent reports time and time again. Clearly, we will report what our position is against that budget if it is approved. My approach would be that we look at the county council membership, because obviously we provide their payroll service as well, so we do have direct access to the data. The county council also is the payroll bureau for a number of other scheme employers. So I think working and looking at the county council first, and then some of our other large scheme employers, such as the city council, which we have a very good operational relationship with, we will then be able to tighten up those figures and report back to committee. But But I think it was important that we got where we felt we might end up in this one report rather than coming back subsequently with other reports to seek funding. So that's the in-house and the consultancy. The members portal, I remember Councillor Barnfather pushed us for some indication of time of delivery of the portal back in September 19. And I think, again, this is linking back to the question from Councillor Chapman, where, again, we have revisited our thinking once we've taken the information from others who are ahead of us in this programme. And I think, really, to be realistic, I think we're probably talking into, you know, the 2022 when this will become more of a reality. There are other options for us to open up things to members online. So, for example, we do have a payslips portal that is used across the county council and with our other payroll clients. So there is the potential to be issuing electronic payslips to pensioners much earlier than when the full portal itself comes online. And the plan is that that would be the subject of a separate report later on in this calendar year, so that actually we could have some step change to a members portal earlier than going to the full portal later on. Privacy data, and obviously the GDPR legislation is obviously a key requirement. The fund issues its privacy notice that is on the website. Obviously, when we're working with other suppliers such as Civica, we also ensure that as part of those exercises that the appropriate privacy notices are in place and the appropriate procurement elements of contracts are you know, reviewed by our own legal department. Obviously, we do follow the data breach process of the county council. But I think, you know, to date, we have had very few issues around data breaches. I think the issue for me around data is members themselves remembering they need to take full responsibility for updating the fund if they change their address. If we're not notified of that change of address, it's then very difficult for us to be 100% comfortable that data, when we're sending things out in the post, that it is going to the right address. So I think, again, a move online through a secure portal with authenticated sign-on will actually support data privacy moving forward as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Terry, is that okay? Okay with that? Thank you. I've got Councillor Anne Peach who would like to speak next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the question I got was about the employers portal. How long is that pilot scheme going to run for, and when are you going to start rolling it out? And are you going to do a phased rollout, employer by employer, or just a big chunk of stuff? The second question I got was about the data checks. I mean, how immediate are those, and how are you going to prevent something similar to the GMP situation, which presumably, I don't know a lot of the details, but presumably even GMP might not have been aware that their data was incorrect. So, yeah.
Okay, so if I can respond to those. So the employers portal, as you see from the report, is being piloted by Nottinghamshire County Council. Discussions have taken place with some borough districts and large multi-academy trusts. John and the project manager have had that engagement, and the plan would be to start working with them the back end of this year to roll that out. For information, we work quite differently with the City Council because they do have direct access currently into the Civica Universal Pension Manager system, so do have access to their own members' records to undertake a raft of activities. But working with them, we will obviously review that. But I think, again, both the portals, it's around accuracy of data. So the fundamental and the underlying foundation to this programme is the data audit and improvement. With regards to GMP, this is a project that all public and private sector pension funds have had to pick up due to errors in the data held by HMRC. So it unfortunately has come down to pension funds to work to do the reconciliation through no fault of its own. But I think you're right. We can't guarantee that there aren't any of these other things somewhere that may well come back up. And again, things like McLeod, Court of Appeal, age discrimination judgment, we have to apply that legal outcome to the fund.
Yeah.
John, I don't know if John wants to add anything about the scheme employers portal as well. John, you're muted.
You're mute, John.
Sorry, I was doing so well as well. Yeah, just in terms of employers, we have been round to a number of them. Obviously, the difficulty now is what position they're in, given that they're working from home and their actual administration issues that they've got. So we will be talking to them over the next coming months to see who's best next to come onto the portal. We hope, my preference would be to look at some of the districts and get some of the districts on the portal first, plus probably the university and some of the big trusts that have also indicated interest. So we will be working on that, but that is going to take some time, given the training that they'll have to go through and just getting things working properly, because it is a little bit more difficult now. We're distancing, so to speak.
Can I just add to that? I mean, the only way this will work is if the systems and processes are adopted by the employers, and we work together to make it happen. And that's why we've engaged with them all along the process and make them they're aware that what we're trying to do. And I'm sure that the officers will do the right thing at the right time to make this thing delivered as soon as possible, but actually it's safe and secure from a data point of view and service to employers and to members. Okay, are there any other comments, questions? I've still got Anne's hand up. Anne, could you put that down? If there are no other questions, we'll move to the vote. As it's a significant decision, I'll ask the clerk to read out alphabetically the names of those members who are entitled to vote in order for them to confirm whether they're voting for or against the recommendations or abstaining. There's some significant amount of money in here. The votes today will not be recorded in the minutes of the meeting unless 2 or more members request it. This is in line with the usual recorded vote arrangement. So I'd like to ask the clerk to read out the names, please, and please mute and unmute when it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Chair. So yes, I'm just going to ask members in turn if they're going to vote for, against or abstain. So Councillor Adair.
For.
Councillor Barnfather.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Kerry.
For.
Councillor Place.
For.
Okay. Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Purdue-Horan.
For.
Councillor Simbiridis.
For.
That's carried, Chair. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. And so the next item on the agenda is the implications of the McLeod judgment. We've talked about this already a couple of times today. I'll formally move the recommendations which are on page 36 of the agenda pack. Do I have a seconder, please?
I will second that and reserve the right.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask John Clues, please, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to be quick because there are two reports related to this situation, one being on consultation, but I'll obviously come on to that. Very briefly then, the purpose of the report is to update Pensions Committee on the impact of the MacLeod and Sargent Court of Appeal ruling that the government's 2015 public sector pensions reforms unlawfully treated existing public sector employees differently based on members' age on the 1st of April 2012. So the report goes on to explain what the activities the pension fund will be required to undertake to implement the potential remedy that's being proposed through the current consultation process. The report provides some explanation on the background of the case in terms of Sargent and the appeal process that was put through by the firefighters and saw that the firefighters and judges joined forces to claim discrimination, and that went through the courts, and the appeal was granted. So that's given the LGPS pension fund a bit of a headache in that because it's changing some of the regulations and increasing some protections for some members of the fund, the fund itself is now going to have to recalculate and go back and recalculate pension benefits. The estimate at the moment is that it may not necessarily impact on that many members. However, the funds and all the funds are required to undertake this process of undertaking the recalculation. Therefore, the report goes on to explain what the impact is going to be. And actually, as part of the valuation, the impact on employers is reasonably small. And that's been accepted and put into the 2019 valuation, which I've highlighted in point 13. The actual impact on employers at a lower level may increase some of their contributions because of increased costs of pensions, but again, we're not quite sure how that's going to pan out at this point in time, and therefore the fund will need to undertake a number of these calculations to understand the impact. We've estimated that we need to look at around 24,000 records. We think that's probably, we're not quite sure, it's probably a conservative estimate maybe, but we're certainly keeping up to date with the how this is moving forward with other funds. The main issue that we will have going forward for the first 12 months is the collection of data, and we will need to go back to employers to provide updated data for the fund to undertake the recalculations, and hence we will need to put into place a project plan and recruit additional resources to undertake this work. The first part of the project will be, as I said, to collect the data, and we've been given a date of the 31st of March 2021 to collect that data, and then following that collection to undertake the calculations going forward to April 2022 and beyond. So what we believe that we need is a project manager to kick the project off, and then bring back to the to Pensions Committee a report on our resources that we need going forward. We're talking to other funds on how they are approaching this. There's a pension managers meeting at the beginning of October where this is on the agenda, and there are various other webinars and meetings going on across the LGPS on how MHCLG and the LGA are going to support funds to undertake this piece of work. So that is my first brief on my first report, Chair, if that's okay. Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm doing it again. Thank you, John, for that comprehensive report. Again, something that we have to do. These things crop up, but we need to understand the resources required, and we'll support you where we need to. We also have a duty, though, in terms of making our admin as efficient, effective as it can in the long term. We're doing that with the digital strategy. So we really need to make sure we can do this work, do it effectively in time, but at the right price, I think. So absolutely. Thank you for that. I'd like to open it up to comments, questions. I've got Chris King, please.
Thank you, Chair. John, could we do a link, please, from the LGPS website to our own site about the actual McLeod case, because there's FAQs actually on this site, and it would be very helpful if we could actually have that link so they can just press on it from our own site, because that hopefully will save you getting a load of questions come firing through.
Yeah, I actually thought there was Chris, to be honest.
I'm just trying to look for it now. I can't see it. I might be missing it, but it would just be very helpful, and hopefully it will just deflect some of the obvious inquiries and interests that you're going to get.
Yeah, one of the things I should have mentioned is that as part of the project, we will need to put in a communication plan. So that is quite a good point, Chris, because MHCLG and the LGA are issuing information all the time on this, and so we will need to make sure that when we get to a point where we need to inform members, that we will do. The main part of the initial communication is going to be with employers due to the data, but I take your point, Chris, and we'll look at that.
Thank you, John. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Chris, I have Councillor Hollis next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure, like many other members of the committee, I do have to find this McLeod judgment extremely intriguing and interesting. But that obviously we have to deal with the implications that are in front of us. Obviously the fallout, and obviously it's very clear that we're going to have some major challenges with regards to administration that's been made clear already. But Jonathan, do we have any sort of expectation of what financial outturn it might have negatively on some of the recipients yet? Or...
Well, there won't be anything negative. It'll be mainly positive in terms of a recalculation of their benefits, and will mainly be the positive. I don't think there are any, to be honest, negatives. The problem being is this is a big project and a big piece of work, which is going to have a small impact on a group of members. So the increases are likely to be really small. But we're going to have to go to current pensioners, look at current pensioners, new pensioners as they come into pension, those that have, we're going to have to look at deaths, those that have died, and spouse pensions. So that's the sort of, you know, the type of lists that are going to be affected. But negatively, no. But who's going to receive it? It's going to be quite difficult to identify until we get down to the actual calculations themselves.
Okay. I see no more hands raised, so we'll now move to the vote. And again, it's about resources. We've seen the recommendations. Again, ask the clerk to read out alphabetically the names of those who are entitled to vote, for them to confirm whether they're voting for or against the recommendation or abstaining. Same comments as I made before. So we'd like the clerk to read out the names, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Councillor Adair?
For.
Councillor Barnfather?
For.
Councillor Garner?
For.
Councillor Hollis?
For.
Councillor Kerry?
For.
Councillor Place?
For.
Councillor Pringle?
For.
Councillor Purdue-Horan?
For.
And Councillor Simbiridis?
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we now move on to item number 9, which is another McLeod report. It's the consultation cover report. And I'll formally move the recommendations on page 39. And do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. May I ask John to come back again, please?
Yeah, you'll be getting fed up with me. It was late in the day that we thought that we should bring the draft consultation to committee just for your information and approval. The report itself just covers mainly what I've just outlined in my previous report, and I wanted to show committee what the consultation is and some of the responses to the consultation. We don't need to get it back to government until I think it's the 9th of October. I'm due to go to a pension managers meeting on the 2nd of October, where I'll be discussing some of the points that we've identified and raised as part of the consultation process. I also, prior to the committee, I did send a copy of the consultation to our actuaries for comment as well, because all the actuaries have been involved in some of the processing and responding to MHCLG. So I sought some views from our actuaries as well, just in terms of some of the impact that this is going to have on our administration, and also to see if MHCLG would be prepared to look at other alternatives to doing all these doing this consultation. I have to say that I'm not optimistic on that, but other funds as well are raising a number of these points that I've put into the consultation, and it's really about raising concerns to MHCLG about the administration, the time, the resources that it will take up against what is going to be, and as I said before, minimal impact to our members.
Yeah. Okay, Jonathan, thank you very much. I'll open that up to questions. I've got Terry Needham. I think, Terry, you wish to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
So,
have you any idea, John, how many winners and losers we've got, and what's going to be the actual process to Is it to pay the winners and ignore the losers, or
No,
other way around, or what?
there aren't going to be any losers, I don't think, Terry. There will be just, like you say, winners. We don't know, actually. We don't think there'll be a lot. Like I say, there's 24,000 records to be going through, roughly. And we think there'll be a small proportion of that, but I really don't know at this stage. I honestly can't, and nobody else really does. We have been talking to actuaries to see what their thoughts are, and they are saying it's potentially small beer, really, but we really just don't know. Yeah, that's all I can say. I can't really say much more than that at the moment. We've done a few sort of calculations on some example members, but it hasn't been a very big beer at all.
Can't we just ignore it then?
No, unfortunately not. We thought about that one, Terry, but we didn't think we could get away with it.
So Terry, we're going to ignore a High Court judgment, are we? Is that what you're saying? Supreme Court judgment. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. And actually, when it first happened, when this was going on originally, actually, it was quite a worrying situation because we didn't really know what this would mean in terms of cost of the fund. So it's good to hear that you're saying it won't be as significant as we may have feared early on. Yeah. So that's great. Thank you.
I would like to say though, Chair, that there is another one on the horizon.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
okay.
We'll wait and see.
Yes. Okay. I see no more raised hands. So I think we'll now move to the vote. I think this, because there's no fund money and all that stuff in it, a show of hands, I think, from those able to vote would help. If you just show your hands, please. Okay. I'd like to ask the clerk if that's carried, I think.
Yeah, could we just double check there are no abstentions or any votes against?
Yes,
just to be clear, members. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, I think we accept silence as approval. So thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to item number 10, and let's wonder who's going to introduce this item. I will formally move the recommendations on page 58 of the agenda pack. Do I have a seconder, please?
And I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. Okay, Jonathan, John, yes. Would you please introduce this one? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is really an update report, and it's also almost similar to an update report I gave back in, I think it's September last year. And the reason for that is that at the time we'd progressed the project to a point where we'd done our sort of reconciliation and sent our data to HMRC, and HMRC were due to get our data back sometime last, I think I said last November. That hasn't happened, and we only got our final file from HMRC towards the end of July 2020. So really what I've done is we've have to move the project on another year, and so we are now due to start to look at the calculations of guaranteed minimum pensions against members' records. We'll also, and we've done some testing of our calculations now, and we're working with Civica to update the software so that we can run a full number of calculations and then be able to come back to committee and tell you what the actual financial impact is going to be. However, a bit of a good news story on top of this is that committee will remember we had as part of the reconciliation, we had a financial reconciliation with HMRC, and we'd initially were sent a bill from HMRC of £750,000. We immediately, once we got off our chairs and got up off the floor, having seen this, we went and did some investigation into our data. And over the year, we've challenged HMRC on a number of occasions, and finally got down to, we've basically reduced that £750,000 down to an amount of £30,000. This has taken quite a bit of time to do. We've looked at a lot of financial records, challenged HMRC, sent information back to HMRC, and eventually they relented, and we've got down to that particular figure. As I said, now we've got the final file. We're ready to do some of our calculations. The only question I've got for committee is, because the financial costs are in place, and it's, as I said at the beginning, this is just reminding committee of what's already been agreed. The only thing I need to seek is an extension of the project manager from October 2020 to September 2021, so that we can continue to progress with those calculations as she is undertaking the work with our software provider to make that happen. So I didn't want to go into too much further detail unless there's any further questions on this report.
Okay, thank you, John, for that comprehensive report. And I think it shows really that the decisions we've made since this popped its head up have been the right decisions.
Yep. And
the investment in the work done to challenge HMRC has proved successful in this case. And I do understand that you do need to continue to have those resources to tidy up the whole thing before it disappears off the scene, and it's getting it right with Civic is an important thing to do. So thank you for that. I'd like to open that up to questions and comments. I've got Councillor Hollis hand up, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first thing needs to be clear. I think we all want to rope Jonathan in to doing our personal taxes. I think that's absolutely fabulous. But no, I mean, how bizarre that we can go down from, well, I worked it out to be a figure from 750 down to 50,000, but I presume that payment of 21,000 we made clear to them we'd already made. So very impressive.
Right.
Yeah, very impressive. But I know, and I think just to pick up round off some of the discussion from previous reports, this post that we just extended for another year, I'd certainly like to see some of these posts worked into on a permanent basis, and to some of the employment of the pension fund, just to provide not only sustainability for the staff, but also making sure we don't lose some of these experienced people who clearly know what they're doing with regards to this project. But and are we satisfied with the number of days to complete now? So obviously I see we've got 20 days of effort worth, and are we satisfied really that this is really going to be an end to this dispute with HMRC, and we're not expecting anything like this in the future with regards to similar basis? Thank you.
Shall I come back on that?
Yeah, Chair? Please.
Thanks very much for your comments. The financial reconciliation's finished now, so we're not going to get we won't get any more on that. The big issue now, Councillor Hollis, is the impact on members and the calculations that we've now got to do. So just for your information, there will be people overpaid, there will be people underpaid, and we will need to bring that back to committee to tell you how much and a proposal on how we communicate and deal with those situations. Everything's been an estimate of time that we've put in. We believe we've got the resources in place to undertake the rest of the project, but clearly I will keep committee and the chair updated on progress over the coming months as we start to do these calculations, because I think I've always said this, even when we kicked off the project, there will be some difficult decisions to be made in terms of how we communicate and how we actually deal with some of the overpayments and some of the issues that will come out of that. But again, we'll have some further discussion on it.
Yeah, the recommendation clearly says that's what we want to do in terms of coming back, etc. So, Councillor Barnfather, Chris, yeah.
Chair, would I be able to come
sorry.
back?
Yes,
sorry.
quick.
I'm sorry, Councillor Barnfather as well. But yeah, that's fine. All I'd ask, Jonathan, is obviously particularly with regards to Mr. Needham, just making sure you keep him abreast, particularly with some of the overpayments. But I think it's important, really, because obviously he's representing the pensioners themselves. I think we need to make sure we use Terry and his knowledge as a bit of a sounding board for some of the implications, and particularly nobody's going to be unhappy receiving an extra cheque, but if we're asking money back from people, I think we need to handle that sensitively.
I think we'll have to deal with that when we know. We will. That's why we're asking for further reports.
No, we're all professionals, and that. But I think it's good to know that that's being looked at sensitively.
Councillor Barnfather, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just an observation, really. Thank you, John, for the presentation, as always. I suppose the lesson in this is never pay your first tax bill. There's always room for negotiation. Unfortunately, that negotiation still cost us £400,000. Yeah. So although we've reduced the amount, the exercise initiated by HMRC have cost this pension fund £400,000 for us to reach that end result. So you multiply that across all the pension funds across the country, an awful lot of money. But thank you for your work on it.
Thank you, Chris. I don't see any other hands raised.
Can I just come back on that, Chair?
Yes.
If that's all right. Yeah, Councillor Barnfather, you're absolutely right. In terms of some of the costs, though, some of that obviously is taken up there, but also some of that cost has been to identify some of the data issues as well. So it's not all taken up by just the financial reconciliation, but you're absolutely right. This is a high cost project, and at the end of it, I think you will see hopefully some savings, because what we will be doing is, and how can I put this? We will be reconciling some of those pensioner payments, and they will be put back to what they should be, not what they are, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Okay.
So it's helped with the bit of getting data right.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
So we will make some further savings on that as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So again, we'll move to the vote. Again, ask the clerk to read, because there's resources involved, read out alphabetically the names of the members who are entitled to vote, and confirm whether voting for, against, or indeed abstain. So, the clerk, please.
Thank you, Chair. So can I start with Councillor Adair?
For.
Councillor Barnfather?
For.
Councillor Garner?
For.
Councillor Hollis?
For.
Councillor Kerry?
For.
Councillor Place?
For.
Councillor Pringle?
For.
Councillor Purdue-Horan?
For.
Councillor Simbiridis?
For.
Thank you. That's carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you very much. So moving on to item number 11, which is the work programme. I'll formally move the recommendations on page 60 Tamsin, could you introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Chair. In the appendix, you can see the work programme for the rest of the committee meetings of the current cycle. Members will note that the AGM has been moved from its usual October date to November. The auditors have been delayed by external factors with their audit work. We'll know by the next committee meeting in October whether the proposed November date will be viable. This does enable us to use the October meeting for some of the reports originally planned for the summer meetings, and these are shown in the work programme. An addition to the work programme for the October meeting is a report on the LAF Strategic Investment Forum, which was held as a virtual conference in August. And the committee is asked to identify any additional reports required. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tamsin. Could you just clarify in a little bit more detail the issues with the auditors and why we've had to do the AGM, just for transparency?
Yes, absolutely. Internally, we met all of our, we worked to the original timetable, but the auditors, when everything went into lockdown, were working on health audits, and they ended up taking much longer than originally planned. So they were late starting on our audit, and they've had delays with organising their staffing resources. And as yet, the audit is not yet complete. Keith probably has a more up-to-date position.
Just the comment that we're legally okay to do that. There's not a problem legally in terms of moving the AGM.
Yeah, all local authorities have had an extension for the current year.
Thank you.
Chair, I was just going to add that, yes, that legally the deadline for audits has been extended this year because of COVID-19.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Barnes, I'll open it up to questions. Councillor Barnesfather, would you like to comment, please? Chris? You're mute.
Sorry, Chair, I hadn't lowered my hand from before. It was a legacy hand.
Oh, well, okay. Councillor Hollis, is yours a real hand?
It is, Mr. Chairman, it is. It was really, I was seeking an addition to the work programme on the 8th of October. Obviously, you'll be aware many funds are now moving towards an environmental and social governance investing strategy, but I'd certainly like to have a discussion, and I'm sure members are very aware of my own position on how I think our funds should be invested. But I think taking that to one side, I think I'd like to think we all can agree that we need to have a discussion on our general investing strategy. Of course, I'm very clear that that won't become the outcome that I'd like to see, but I'd hope as chair you'd like to genuinely have a discussion about how other funds choose to have strategies and additions to their strategies. And frankly, it might be an enlightening exercise for us all to not only understand the current strategy, but potential options for change. I mean, my certain favourite investing strategy is more of an impact investment strategy, where we actually positively invest in things that we would like to see outcome where possible, whether that be the whole fund or part of the fund. But I'd certainly like to see an addition, and whether that has to be a formal amendment, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave that to your grace, but just to see a discussion on the investment strategy on the fund, Mr. Chairman. Quite a loose general discussion, really. And even I'd be happy to have it time limited of an hour or something, just a discussion of the investment strategy of this pension fund.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom, for that. We all want to make the right decisions. We all want to consider all the different views and options. That's exactly what we do. And we have a working group coming up to do exactly that in terms of climate risk, etc. So, Tamsin, do you want to remind us of what we're doing in the next weeks and months about that?
Yes, part of that comes up in the next report. But yes, in September there's a working party that's going to discuss the climate risk report that LGPS Central have produced for us, and also to the October meeting, we're also reviewing all of our strategy documents, which includes our investment strategy, which inherent within it is our responsible investment strategy.
Thank you. And may I confirm whether or not members have already been invited to the working party or not? When will that invite?
I believe it's already.
I think we've had it.
I think
we've already been invited.
Yes, it should be in people's diaries, Chair.
Councillor Hollis should be aware of that. Okay. Thank you. I've got Mr. Palfreman. Keith, your hand is raised. Did you wish to speak?
apologies, legacy hand.
Okay, thank you. Tom, you've got your hand still up? Okay. Thank you very much. So we've discussed the addition Tamsin mentioned, seen the report. Again, can we indicate by hand, members that are entitled to do so, that you approve the report with that amendment, please? I'll just wait for the officers, the clerk, to let us know whether we've got responses from everybody.
Yep, that looks fine, Chair. So just for clarity, can I just just ask anyone if they are voting against or are abstaining, if they could just make it known.
Thank you. Voting against, Mr. Chairman. I think I fundamentally disagree with Tamsin's response, although I recognise very clearly that we should be having a discussion. I fundamentally believe that discussion should be at this committee, not at a working party. That's how I see it. And
well, Tom, I understand what you're saying. Totally get what you're saying. You're quite entitled to vote in whichever way you wish. The fund strategies include the investment strategy and the asset allocation, etc. And we are discussing climate change in significant detail at the working party, and that will feed into the process. Anyway, so thank you very much. That was carried. Thank you.
Indeed.
Moving on to the climate risk analysis progress report to show how we are working on addressing climate risk. It's item number 12 in your reports. I'll move the recommendations on page 67 of the agenda pack. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you very much. Tamsin, would you like to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members were informed in February about the planned climate risk analysis that LGPS Central are completing for us. This report is to advise the committee of the progress on this piece of work. Data has been provided to Central, and they have processed this and provided a first draft of the report, which has been reviewed by officers. It's a long report. It's based on complex and in some cases uncertain or absent data. So it's important that members understand the content and the limitations of the analysis. LGPS Central have offered to provide training to the committee and officers, and to this end a working party has been arranged to present the report to us, and members are encouraged to attend this meeting later this month. And I'd just like to emphasise that this shouldn't be replacing committee discussions, but it should inform everybody's understanding of the piece of work that Central have done on our behalf. And following this report, working party, a report will be presented to the October committee meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tamsin, for making that very, very, very clear. I'll open that up for questions or comments. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think any member of the committee would be surprised to know I'd like to speak on this item, but it's good that we're getting a discussion, though. It's not been talked about for so long, so we're getting some discussion now, so we're making progress. But a very simple question. Obviously, I can see the purpose of this report. I'd just like to know, are we going to be getting access to this LGPS Central report in full? Will members of the committee receive the in full before a summary document is formulated?
Members of the committee will see the report in full. It won't be a public document because of the methodology and the data behind it that's taken. The companies that put it together spent a lot of time and money in developing it, so they're not willing to make that public. But the report will be shared in the exempt part of the meeting and in the working party with members in full. And there will, following that, be quite a lot of information that we will be able to share publicly. We're discussing possibly a TCFD report, and then that will feed into a climate risk strategy if that's what members choose to do.
Thank you, Tamsin. Just for clarification, we're not just getting started in being interested in this, Councillor Hollis. As you know, this work was commissioned several months ago, and I think before you made your first pension fund appearance. So we are serious about climate change, but we want the right result in terms of policies for our pension fund and its members So and that's why it's a very serious and detailed piece of work. Councillor Chapman, I think you and Tom, your hand's still up, but Councillor Chapman, you'd like to comment, please.
Yes, please. 2 points, really. First of all, we're obviously already shifting our strategy in the direction that you mentioned, right? And some in terms of disinvestment. I mean, I see some mention in the in one of the reports about the fact that BP is looking very vulnerable, and we perhaps ought to be moving away from BP and oil generally. And so the stuff seems to be happening below the surface. We also seem to be reinvesting in sustainable equities as well. I would like, and so I think that's a very good thing, right? It's happening organically, but it's not happening. It would be nice to see it more transparent, to be able to almost have a report quite regularly when we are shifting our investments in the two directions, one disinvesting and reinvesting. So that is something that I would ask you to consider, please, so we can have a sort of regular report on that, what's happening under the surface. The second point I'd make is I'm particularly interested in what the end game is of all these reports we're expecting. Now, my end game would be that we would end up by having scrutinising existing investment in carbon, existing investment in sustainable equities, and looking for new opportunities. So I really want to know what the end game is, so we can actually focus on on real investment decisions on this in this area, rather than receiving generic reports about strategy, which we obviously need, because that needs to encompass, that's the framework in which you make your specific decisions. But I'm quite interested in knowing about the, what the process is for making the specific decisions as well. So those 2 points. Thank you.
Tamsin, just quick. I mean, we are doing, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would say that a big chunk of the analysis that Central are doing is not generic. It is very specific to our current investments as at the end of March 19, which was our baseline. We since then agreed with the committee a longer term strategic asset allocation, which was discussed at working parties and at committee. And the analysis then looks at the impact of that going forward and the impact of climate risk on that investment strategy. So it is absolutely all aimed at informing our investment strategy.
Sorry, can I just pursue this? What about my point about regular reporting? If we're doing some good things, I think we need to be illustrating it and making it transparent. And I've got one final question, a very small one. When is this working party? Because I haven't got it, and it will be my fault, not yours. I haven't got it down in my diary.
21st of September.
Thanks. You couldn't send me another invitation.
Look forward to seeing you there, Graham.
Hey, my error. Put my hands up. Yeah. Okay, 21st. Thanks.
Councillor Hollis, is it a quick one? Your hands up again. Is it very quick, please?
It's a very, very quick one, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing it back. And it was firstly to ask Tamsin when we'd be able to get access to the report. And if she said we could get it at the working party, could we have it any sooner so we could digest it if the council already has it? And then I think finally, just to recognise Councillor Chapman's points, I thought extremely well made. Exactly kind of the mindset I'm in. I'm less interested, Councillor Kerry, in the headline of what we're doing, more interested in the conclusion. It's all well and good highlighting the fact that with climate risk assessment, but then the conclusions don't seem to match the headline, I think is my concern. And I pick up Councillor Chapman's probably similar recognition of concern there. That's all I've got to say, really. Thank you.
I will come back to that. All parties have been open and been invited to previous meetings, to working groups. All have been able to take part in council, in pension fund committee at various stages. There's certainly, Councillor Chapman, has been some stuff going out, but the media don't seem to report much of what we do and what we say, even though we put press releases out. Anyway, so I think we need to move on. I don't think we've got anything to add. Anne, sorry, Anne Peach, you've your hands raised.
I mean, I would wholly support Graham's comments, given the Nottingham City Council's energy strategy, but it's not. Yeah, we need a strategy, and it all depends on what the risks are and how they've been assessed. But I would like to see that some targets or deadlines to aim for as well, rather than just working within a framework. But yeah, I'm sure we can discuss that at the working party.
And that is absolutely the right place to do it. Thank you for your comment. Okay, did you want to come back, Tamsin, on that?
I just wanted to confirm that the report should be circulated before the working party. Yeah. At the moment, we only have a very draft one. It's got a lot of comments, needs some corrections, typos, that kind of thing. But there will be a version circulated so people can read it before the working party. It is certainly the Word version I had was over 100 pages, so it's a significant document.
Thank you for that, Tamsin. Okay, so I think that's all of the hands gone. So we'll move to the vote. Can you indicate again? There's not any finance at this stage. So could you indicate by hand all those that are able to, whether you are for? I'll ask the clerk to see, is that everybody for?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, just for clarity, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, if anyone is abstaining or voting against, if they could just make that clear.
So they're all real hands up fours. That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, item 13 is fund valuation and performance. So looking at the most up-to-date data we have, I guess. I'm sure there's more data that's happened since these reports were written, but if I can formally move the recommendations on page 75 of the agenda pack, please. Can I have a seconder?
And I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you. Tamsin, could you introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is the first committee meeting since the COVID-19 lockdown in March, so I'd like to take the opportunity to reassure the committee that throughout that crisis, as the investments team worked from home, the teams remained fully operational. Treasury management has continued on a daily basis for both the pension fund and the county council, and ensuring cash flow to pay pensions remains our top priority. Although there was no meeting in June, members were kept informed of the fund valuation and performance to the end of March. During the last 6 months, officers have received regular updates from our investment managers and oversight and support from our independent advisor. However, the main purpose of this report is to inform the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee of the value of the pension fund at the end of the latest quarter and provide information on the performance of the fund. The table in paragraph 7 shows the valuation at the end of June, at the end of March, and the value a year ago. This demonstrates the steep reductions experienced at year end and the significant recovery since then, although the fund remains at a lower valuation than a year previously, and asset valuations continue to be volatile. Within this valuation is 321 million of infrastructure investments, amounting to 5.9% of the fund. 6.5% of the fund is now committed to infrastructure investments. Paragraph 9 shows a more detailed analysis of valuations by portfolio. Please note that there is now a separate portfolio showing all the fund's investments managed through LGPS Central Limited, following the transition of the corporate bonds to their new fund in March and their management of the fund's gilts since May. Paragraph 11 shows the fund account for the first quarter of 2021 and the unaudited full year figures for last year. The core index portfolio section reflects the equity market's movements over the last quarter and the transfer of the small LGPS central funds to the new portfolio. In the Schroders portfolio, members' attention is drawn to the significant transactions within the North America region. This is as a result of the transition of the US investments to the new mandate, which was completed in June. The new LGPS Central portfolio has already been mentioned. LGPS Central now manage over 650 million of pension fund assets, which is 12% of the total. This figure is expected to increase over the next few years. I need to mention an error in the report. In paragraph 18, a formula is missing against emerging markets. The correct total net purchases figure on that portfolio is £135,064,000. ASI have been actively managing our property portfolio under difficult circumstances. I'm pleased to report the sale of Northwich and the sale of Lands Lane, Leeds since the last committee meeting. The LGPS Central Emerging Market Funds and private equity funds, which were in the specialist portfolio, have moved to the LGPS Central portfolio, and that explains the fund movements in the specialist portfolio. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tamsin. I'm going to open up this for comment, questions, and just remember that we are still in the open part of the meeting. If there's any sensitive stuff that we need to, can you please try and keep that for the second meeting, which is exclusion after the exclusion of public and press. So, do we have any hands, please? Tom Hollis, Councillor Hollis.
Apologise for keep talking. I seem to be the voice of the opposition today, Chairman. I don't know where the Labour group are today on the county council. They've fallen asleep. Councillor Pringle, wake up. But no, with regards to the report itself, I'm quite impressed with the level of investments with regards to properties inside some of this report. And obviously, I'll save some of my more sensitive comments for the later reports. But I think, doesn't it highlight that actually when investments are made sensitively and positively, actually what kind of income can be generated from investing in sustainable and solidly performing businesses is something that I know the City Council do extremely well, and Mansfield District Council, Councillor Garner will be aware, do well. And not to toot my own trumpet, but Ashfield District Council do it extremely well now. We raise more in investments than we do in council tax. And I think it's great to see, and I think particularly the Conservative members on this committee, I think should hopefully look at what the pension committee do, look at what members around this table do, and take some of that knowledge into our own council investments. I appreciate not all relevant to this committee item itself, but it is good to see the solid investments that we're making, particularly with that Aberdeen standard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Just to remind you that we're here to discuss what we do for the pension fund, not for all the councils, etc. around Nottinghamshire. But no doubt that type of discussion will happen in the places they need to happen. Any other questions or comments in the open fund valuation? I don't see anybody. So in that case, we've moved the recommendation. All those in favour by hand, please, for. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
So again, for clarity, anybody that's wants to vote against or abstain, just in case the hands came up by mistake, can you please indicate now? Okay, I think the clerk will inform us that's
carried. Indeed. Sorry, Chair. Yes, that's carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So we're moving on to item number 14, which is the independent advisors report. Again, there is a recommendation on page 79, and I'll ask our independent advisor. I'll propose that recommendation. I'd like a seconder, please.
And I'll second that and reserve the right.
Thank you, Councillor Garner, and ask Mr. Bourne to introduce the item, please.
Good. Thank you very much, Chair. And as we're well into lunchtime, I'll try and keep this pretty short. It's no great surprise that markets have risen, given the level of support from central banks and governments. And I'd note that much of the rise has come actually from large tech in America. So the US index has gone to a new high. Most other indices, including the UK, are a long way off that. Second thing I'd just note quickly is that bond yields have gone to new lows. At one point, if you invested £1,000, you were only going to get £1 a year. Today, you get about £2, but it's still very low indeed. And that has had an impact on all valuations, because if your choice is investing in bonds or equities, and bonds are very expensive, you're prepared to hold equities at higher prices. Just note that tech has fallen in the last week. I wouldn't read too much into that. It's a kind of healthy correction in the market. I'm more worried about private markets, and that's not because their situation is worse. It's simply that the valuations we get are not cleared through the market, and therefore you can place less reliance on them. Doesn't mean we should be not invest in them, just be a little bit more careful about what we're doing there. I'd also note that dividends, which were mentioned just now, are down around 50% in the UK, around 20 to 30% in the world, and there will be an impact both in equities and also real estate in the yield. I don't know exactly how much they're going to bounce back, but it's something, again, to note. Generally, the economy is falling. The general estimate is something like 5% around the world, and it will bounce back almost simply because it has fallen so far. I think my major worry here is that the UK is going to have a different course from the rest of the world. And I don't wish to introduce politics here, but I think that's down to the fact that the leadership at government level has been pretty flaccid at best. And I think you could call it worse than that. And there's a worry for me and that sterling might fall as a result. Looking further ahead, I keep on banging on about how important inflation is. Despite what is happening, despite the fact that we are seeing higher prices in food, I think the deflationary trend is still pretty strong. And I don't think we're going to see a sustained rise in inflation for some time to come. So overall, I'd expect markets generally to carry on their current path. Returns are likely to be a bit lower than they have been over the past 5-10 years, simply because valuations are so high. I don't think there's much great action we need to take in the portfolio at the moment, because the actuary, when he did his calculations, has built in quite a considerable level of prudence, and I think we're well within inside that. So bottom line is not a lot to do at the moment.
Okay, William, thank you. Terry, I think you've got your hand up. Would you like to make a question or comment, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just two questions, really. William's quite rightly mentioned the sort of near zero return on fixed interest. Is there a future for that in the portfolio? Is one question. And the second one is, if sterling is predicted to fall, is that a reason for increasing the overseas allocation?
Yeah.
Just two questions.
Yeah, Terry, answer the first question. Right now, it is very hard to justify putting money into investment grade or government fixed interest because, as you said, you're getting such a low return. There may be a reason to hold it purely for short-term cash, but that's about the only one. Looking forward, at some point, I'm not going to predict when, bond yields will normalise and you'll get a better return. And at that point, it will be worth considering again. Second question, I'm not predicting necessarily sterling will fall. I am saying there is a significant risk it might. And I think it does, whether we should hold more overseas equities is a valid question. It is something for discussion how big we think that risk is and whether we should react by holding more foreign investments. We do have a significant weighting in the UK. The advantage of that is that it matches our liabilities better. The disadvantage, as you say, is that if the sterling falls, we would do better in overseas.
Do you want to come back, Terry?
Yeah, that's fine. No doubt we'll discuss it in the next meeting with the investment strategy anyway.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. And I have to admire Mr. Bourne's raw enthusiasm for investment. So it's good to see some passion at these meetings. But I think I really enjoyed reading his report. I thought it was really well balanced. I'd love to have seen him go harder on the politics, but of course I would have done. My thing, I think it clearly highlights to the committee, if we're going to commission people like Mr. Bourne, we need to listen to their advice. Paragraph 2 recognises the fact that oil and fossil fuels are weak investments. We need to start taking action. The recommendations asks for some action. Let's start including them. Let's start including that we take firm action on the advice, independent advice that we receive. It's clear from paragraph 7, as we all know, common sense. Mr. Bourne highlights a number of concerns and long-term changes, we need to start recognising what steps are we going to take to implement the recommendations and direction. And I think we should be including that in every report that comes through this committee. If we recognise that oil prices are falling, why aren't we putting in recommendations to say that we need to start investigating, pulling on a financial reason, forget the environmental benefits, on a financial, purely financial acknowledgement that we need to be removing our funds from these organisations, Mr. Chairman. And I apologise that I will crowbar it into every item, but when we're presented with evidence, we need to make sure we take action. And your report asked me for a recommendation, and that's the recommendation I'd like to include.
Thank you, Tom. I'm sure you'll be given that opportunity again this afternoon and at the future meeting. So, Graham Chapman, Councillor Chapman. You're mute. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, no, I've been muted. First point is I'd like William's view on the US economy more explicitly, because within the US there is a great imbalance in the stock market between the tech sector and everything else. It seems to be the tech sector that's driving it, and there may be a certain vulnerability in there, particularly as a precursor to any discussion we have with Schroders later, because Schroders are they're reworking our investments, and probably rightly so, because their performance hasn't been that brilliant. But I'd be interested in William's view on that. The worrying thing in William's report is the long-term reduction in returns that he's predicting. And, well, what do I know? But I would probably go along with that. And if you get a combination of that plus the inflation at some point that he's predicting, then that leaves us with a structural problem as a fund. And I'd be interested to know his view on that. And finally, one thing I'm slightly surprised about is that William hasn't mentioned infrastructure as a potential source of investment, because I know he's banged on about it. He's mentioned it in the past. And so I'd be interested in whether infrastructure is somewhere, given the fact that we have, bonds are so flat, it might be an alternative. Thank you.
Good, Graham. Quite a lot there, Graham. Let me try and come back on all of them fairly briefly. Tech, clearly a winner from what's happened. Right across the board, whether it's Tesla, whether it's Amazon, huge winner. I think my question long term is, A, valuations are obviously very high indeed. There's a lot of expectation there. Secondly, will it be held back by, which many of us may think are valid concerns, that tech is just getting so large that the US government's going to have to try to find a way of hauling them back a bit. And we're already seeing debates of that kind. Now, those might be problems. And I think that second one may well be informed by whoever wins the next election. If you get a Democratic government in the US, that might have an impact. So on the economy, I wouldn't expect the US economy to do anything very different from the rest of the world, but the nuances might be around what happens to tech, what happens to politics. Second thing I just mentioned there is China-America. It's fairly clear to me that China and America are going to kind of go in slightly different directions, and there's going to be more friction. I don't necessarily mean a trade war, but certainly more friction. And that, again, could begin to impact the level of growth in the US and China. What does it mean for markets? They're very expensive. Tech is very expensive. Will what we call value, i.e. the non-tech, the much cheaper stocks, come back? I think it will. I'm certain they will. The question is when. And my guess is the when is going to be when people suddenly think that inflation is going to start to take off again. And as I say in my report, I don't think that's any great time soon. So I wouldn't be surprised if Schroders continue to struggle for some time yet, I'm afraid. And when I say struggle, I don't mean disaster. I just mean not outperforming. Does that mean we should suddenly kind of move into tech? No, I don't think we should do. And the reason for that is it is very expensive. And I think we're better off buying a value type stocks, which are much cheaper, and being patient. One other little point there is that value does pay an income of kind of 2, 3, 4%. Tech usually doesn't. Long-term returns, yep, I agree. Returns are going to be lower. Definitely a conversation to have with actuaries, but it's a long-term conversation. I don't think we should rush into anything at the moment. And finally, infrastructure. You're quite right. I'm a big supporter of infrastructure. This fund has more than most funds do in infrastructure. I actually think we should be looking for more, but it is quite a fashionable thing to invest in, and therefore prices are pretty high in many areas at the moment. And we've done quite well because we've got a significant chunk in listed infrastructure, which is quite a bit cheaper. Does that answer?
Yeah, it was a good answer. It'll do for the moment anyway. Thanks.
You'll have every chance to ask again later, Councillor Chapman. Yes. Okay. Thank you, William. Anybody else have any other questions at this part of the meeting? I can't see any hands. So the recommendation was moved and seconded. I'd like to ask if we can move to the vote. And again, can members indicate with their hands if they are in favour of the recommendation, please? Councillor Hollis, I can't see you. I don't know if you're there.
It's carried anyway, Chair, without unless So and again, sorry,
he's back. So we've had to vote.
Exactly clear what we're voting for. The recommendations just say consider whether there are any actions.
Yeah, I mean the actions pretty much are that we consider all this at the next in the future. We're not going to make any decisions in this part of the meeting. So if you understand that, are you for?
I'm for.
Thank you. Is that carried? I think.
Yeah, that's carried, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you all for the way you've conducted the meeting so far. It's difficult, we know that, but we have to do it. This is one of the most important things we can do, is to protect the pensions of, as we know, over 140,000 members that we currently have. I'll now move to item number 15, which is the exclusion of the public. So I will invite the committee to resolve that the public be excluded for the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the discussions are likely to involve disclosure of exempt information described in Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. And that the independent advisor, Mr. William Bourne, remains in the meeting to be able to contribute to those discussions. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that and reserve the right.
Can members approve in the raising of the hand method, please?
Chairman, the privacy sector for people at home. Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Mike.
Just going over the privacy section for members at home. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'll read it again. The committee being invited to resolve that the public be excluded for the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that the discussions are likely to involve disclosure of exempt information described in Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So what we're saying is that we're going to continue the meeting in a while to discuss the sensitive information and work then. So the public will be not able to watch that part of the meeting.
Just referring back to the chat we had prior to the meeting with regards members being in their own home.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Apologies. Yes. Yeah. So if there are members that are staying in the meeting, please be aware that having family in the room really there should not anybody else. This meeting is with you, and they should be excluded from that, from seeing and any information that we discuss at that time in your homes, if that's where you're watching from. Does everybody understand that? Thank you, Mike. Okay, no questions with that? Okay, well, I've moved the recommendation. Can we just check that vote again, please, Mike? I didn't know if I saw you raise your hand. Thank you.
Right. Yep. That's
Okay.
lovely. Thanks very much indeed. Yep. That's carried, Chair.
And I also thank the members of the public who've taken the time to watch us today. I hope they've seen the important work that we do, and we'll come and see again sometime. Thank you.